Hi, it's Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we answer the question, how do I meet people after retirement? In this next series, we'll focus on how to build meaningful relationships in retirement. We're going to focus on three aspects. First, we're going to talk about nurturing and strengthening family bonds. Second, we'll talk about how to build new friendships and relationships in retirement. And third, we'll talk about giving back through volunteering. When it comes to the importance of meaningful relationships, the studies are absolutely crystal clear. Who is that person that you call when you get promoted? Who is that person you call when someone passes? Who is that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with? These are all different types of meaningful relationships, from friends and acquaintances. And sometimes the person for each of these situations is the same person, but oftentimes it's not the same person. I remember talking to Emily, and we were talking about what makes her happy. What does fulfillment look like for her? And for many of us, it's who we spend our time with. And the studies actually show, and I'll put it here on the screen for you, where there was a report published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships. And it said that it takes roughly 50 hours of time with someone to move them from an acquaintance to a casual friend. It says you need 90 hours of time with them to go from a casual friend to the next stage, which is a simple friend. And then you need more than 200 hours with that person to go from a simple friend to someone that you would consider a close friend. The fact that we need to spend more than 200 hours with someone to consider them a close friend is why the first place I tell you to look at building meaningful relationships is with your family. You already spend all the time with your family. You have the ups, you have the downs. They have a pretty good understanding of you. You have a pretty good understanding of them. When you have strong relationships with your family, it helps you to have that sense of belonging, that sense of community. We all want to be our most authentic self, while at the same time, we want to be accepted for who we are while we struggle with the difficulty of showing all that we are. And oftentimes, when it comes to our family, if we're lucky enough, they are one of the few people who know all that we are. They've seen all of ourselves. There is this old saying that my wife used to say, where it's like, you got to bring your whole self to work. And I would joke with her and I'd be like, your whole self, like your whole self. And we would laugh because sometimes you don't want to bring your whole self to work. We want to be professional and have our different masks on as far as the way we interact with other people. I'm not naive in pretending that you're cool with all of your family, because if the only thing we have in common is the fact that we're related, sometimes that's not enough for us to be able to maintain a meaningful relationship. Studies show that there's normally five categories that bring us together, and you can see why your family is normally going to be someone that you do get along with, because you normally have to have the same history. Well, we're in the same family, so we probably have the same history, where we have the same lineage and the same family tree. Number two would be location. We normally want to be in the vicinity of the person. We want to be able to see them on a kind of a regular basis, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, where it's not very difficult for us. We normally need to speak the same language, maybe have the same religion, and then normally we share some things as far as the same culture. And that could be the way we dress, could be the events that we celebrate, the holidays that we celebrate, the type of foods that we eat. When you normally have two to three of them in common, it normally leads to a very strong and meaningful relationship. So when it comes to your family, maybe we want to start with our kids, maybe we want to move on to our grandkids. Maybe there's some of our aunts and uncles, or maybe our cousins. If there's someone that lives around you and you're on relatively good terms, go ahead and reach out to them. See if there's a way that you can spend quality time together so that you can start building meaningful relationships. I've already showed you the numbers, so you've already spent the 200 hours with them. So that means you already have the framework for being able to have a close relationship with your family members. Now, if for some reason the relationship is strained with that particular family member, we normally want to see if we can have open and honest communication. If we're able to have that open dialogue, it allows us to be able to see if we can move on from here. We don't want to build any relationship on the foundation of a lie. The way I often describe it to people is, I remember when I was a part of this congregation, it was probably over 10 years ago. And it wasn't the most pleasant of congregations to be a part of. There was all of these cultural events, and they were culture warriors, and they were trying to do all this other stuff. And for me to fit in, I could not express any of my views, because I knew if I told them what I thought, then they would be upset with me. They wouldn't want to hang out with me, and then we probably wouldn't be friends anymore. But the reality is, as a result of who I was pretending to be, I ended up attracting more people like them. So I was driving myself crazy. I was actually creating my own prison, where these people were like, oh, yeah, Dre, he's one of us. He fits in. And I'm sitting there dying on the inside. I'm sitting there freaking out. And eventually I came to the realization that if I was my most authentic self and it pushed certain people away, that was actually a good thing. That was actually my benefit, to not have to deal with that person anymore. So I started being more open, more honest, more forthright. And just as I thought would happen, one by one, they stopped hanging out with me, to the point that we ended up leaving that congregation. But the reality is, we should have left years beforehand. I was trying to fit into a situation that I had no business being in. So when it comes to you and your family and these different relationships that you're trying to build, Be your most authentic and honest self. If they accept that, then you have a great foundation to build the rest of your relationship on. If they don't accept that, then it's okay as well. Because your goal isn't to get a yes, your goal is to just get an answer. It could be yes, it could be no. It doesn't really matter. You just need to know. The problem that we have, and even in sales when you have your own business, is we spend so much time trying to get yeses that we're almost diluting our own value. And it's okay that everybody isn't interested in what you have. It's not like you have to be a chameleon. You can be who you are, allow yourself to build these great relationships. And the crazy thing that will happen, or at least what happened for me, is once I pushed away all those other people, I actually started attracting people who were just like me, where we shared a lot of the same attributes. And I loved being around them. It was a great experience. But because I was pretending to be someone else, I was actually pushing away the people that I would have enjoyed being around the most, and I was attracting the people that I enjoyed being around the least. For me, authenticity is probably number one. If you're authentic and you're thoughtful, we could pretty much have any view. I just want to have open and honest conversations with someone. For you, it might be a different core value that you need in that family member for that relationship to work. But for most of us, if you just said, I don't know where to start, Dre, normally it's going to be love, compassion, understanding, patience, forgiveness. If you have these attributes, if these are things that are important to you, you'll find that most people, this is going to be a great foundation for a good relationship. I find when people lack forgiveness and they're bringing up stuff that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, we don't really have time for that. We're retired and we're looking for happiness and fulfillment. And the reality is, every 5 years, we're almost a completely different person. If you think about things that you did 5 years ago, you probably realize that you wouldn't necessarily do many of those things anymore. And that's why often when we talk about financial planning and different things, that's why I focus so much on wisdom. As we gain wisdom from the experiences that we have, we make different decisions next time. And sometimes people can appreciate that change, and sometimes people can't. Sometimes people still see that high school student who toilet papered a house, or maybe they see that college student who did that one dumb dare and drunk whatever that drink was. But oftentimes life changes us, at least if we're doing a good job at it. And when life changes you, it will often shift your alignment, where there are people that you were unaligned with that now you're aligned with. There's people that you were aligned with that now you're unaligned with. And that's okay. If you're someone who feels it's probably going to be a big ask to start with family and you want to start with friends instead, I think that's totally fine too. So let's talk about building meaningful relationships with our friends. The benefit of having meaningful relationships with your friends is you have someone to share your experiences with. We've already talked about the number as far as the time you need to spend with them to become a friend, but when you talk about what we do with them, that is a great thing about friendship. The benefit I often find people have when it comes to their friends versus their family is sometimes we feel an obligation to our family and we didn't choose our family. They were chosen for us. We were born together. But your friends, you get to choose what it is you have in common. Because you have that choice, now you can take a step back and say, well, what do I like doing? What things would be great for me to spend my time with? And then you're able to find other people who also enjoy those same things. If you enjoy hiking, then you can find a hiking group. And guess what? Everyone in that group likes hiking. So anytime you want to go hiking, you can call any one of them and it'll be a great experience. If you're someone who likes to read books, you can join a book club. And everyone in that group likes to read books. Maybe you retire from the same industry. You could have gone to the same college. There are so many things that we can share a commonality with, and that may be something that we can build a really good relationship with. We have a level of rapport because we already have something in common. We're normally going to meet with a certain group. So as a result, it's not any one person that you have to spend that time with. You can meet in the group and there could be 5, 10, there could be 50 people in the group. And then you can sit at a different table, meet someone. And if the only thing you have in common is what the group was designed for, so if it was a basket weaving group, and that's all the group had in common, then you talk about basket weaving. But as you sit and have these conversations, you may realize you have other things in common. And when you build these things, every time you find another thing you have in common, that's a little bit more rapport you have with them. It's something else that you can do with them. And when you build these relationships by joining these groups, you start to build a community where you can go to events together, where if you're someone who likes the same music and then the concert comes up, you already have the people you can go with. And now you don't have to worry as much about isolation and being alone. You have the great opportunity to always have someone that you have something in common with, that when you find an opportunity to do these things, they're very likely to say yes. And then you're really able to start building this network, which is pretty important when it comes to your retirement because we're social creatures by nature. We enjoy talking to other people, but at the same time in retirement, that transition can be difficult. It's very important for us to maintain as many of our long term relationships that we already have as we can, because as I already showed you, you need at least 90 hours with someone, at least that's what the study said, for them to be considered a friend. You need over 200 hours with them to be considered a close friend. You probably spent more than 200 hours with different people that you worked with. And when you retire, you may be missing out on some of your really good friends. Find a way to maintain those relationships. Whether you meet once a week for lunch or you connect with them on social media, you want to make sure you keep those relationships, that you maintain the longest relationships that you have. Those are where you have the most meaning, the most memories, and the greatest experiences. And if it's possible, find something that you have in common outside of work. Once you have that thing in common, then you have that ability to hang out with them outside of work, where when they come, you can tell them, hey, look, this is a no talking about work environment. I'm retired. You left the office. Let's not talk about work. And they'll say, okay, or they won't. If they're unable to do it and it bothers you, then you may have to communicate with them on social media until they retire. And then you can start communicating back in person, having those lunches, enjoying each other's company. But try your best to maintain those longer relationships as you work on building your newer relationships during that transition and retirement. And third on our list of ways to maintain and build meaningful relationships, we're going to talk about giving back through volunteering. When you meet people who volunteer, you already know that they're going to be, generally speaking, someone who's very giving, someone who's very compassionate. And when you're able to give to the same cause, that's a really special type of relationship that you get to have with them. It is someone who's able to share their experiences. Why is that important to them? Why is it important to you? When you build that type of a bond, you already know that that person wants to leave a positive impact on the world. You know that that person has compassion and cares about the cause, whether that's an environmental cause, whether that's helping underserved communities, whether they just want to help kids prepare for college or they want to teach kids how to sew. There are so many community service opportunities available that oftentimes just by being around people where we're giving back, that creates immense value for us, where we feel that we're serving others. So we're very happy to be able to give back. It reminds me of this challenge that I remember reading, and basically this guy was doing a happiness challenge. He did all sorts of things. He was skydiving, he was eating food, he was traveling around the world. He was doing all the things that we often think of when we say, okay, what would make me happy? And he ended up being able to give back where he helped someone, and that gave him the greatest amount of happiness. And so then the rest of the happiness challenge, he was doing community service projects, he was giving back, he was helping, and he realized that the joy that he had of being significant in someone else's life was something that he could not replace with anything else. And I have found that to be true as well. When you talk about wanting to contribute and leave the next generation better off, or creating some positive impact where you'll be remembered and someone will appreciate you, you and I know that when you're able to give to someone in need, the way that person looks at you and appreciates you and the way that they think about you and talk about you, it feels really good because they think so highly of you. And it's true because you gave of your time, you gave of your means, you gave of your wisdom, and they are better off for it. So they are very appreciative and thankful for you. For me, I would describe it as the joy that I have parenting. There's a lot that goes into parenting. And I tell my kids the same things all the time. And I write down some of the wisdom that they help me to give them because they have these interesting events that happen and it requires you to think of these solutions. And then you just do it over and over and over again. And they keep forgetting and forgetting. And then one day the light clicks and they're like, hey, you're right about that. Or when I watch my kid go to the next level, win an event or something, and I know that I spent hours practicing and helping them, it just feels really good. I don't even get the trophy, but they get the trophy. Or when they just want to share in something with me, when they would draw and they'd be like, hey, dad, come look at my drawing. And I'll be like, yeah, thank you for showing it to me. That's great. It just feels really good to be significant and important in someone else's life. And it just reminds us that I can't be all that bad, right? I can't be all that bad if there's someone out there that thinks that highly of me. And that's one of the things that I think is a really cool benefit of volunteering. It gives you a little bit of perspective about how cool of a person you are, but it can also give you perspective on how blessed of a person that you are. Volunteering is also a great way if you're worried about not being able to use your talents where you're not interested in necessarily working, but you also have built a great skill set. You have a lot of wisdom to give. Volunteering in communities that are aligned with the work that you've done or the education that you've gained, those are great opportunities. I think you guys remember I had a video previously where I talked about a gentleman who was a systems engineer and he was able to volunteer at the local high schools for their robotics league. And he became someone who would walk around whenever someone would say, hey, my robot's not working. And then he would look at the code and he'd help the kids out. And that was very beneficial for him. He was still able to use his skill set, so it wasn't waning away, but he was able to give back and help the next generation. He shared his wisdom, his stories, his experiences. He showed them that there really is a future for you where you can play with robots and get paid very handsomely to do it. And he felt really good about being able to do that. For you to volunteer, there's normally a checklist of 10 things I normally look at, and I'll put the list up for you. Number one, I always tell people to reflect on your passions and your interests. Think back to things that you used to do. I know for a fact I've always loved to do puzzles. I did them as a kid, I've done them as adults. I just stopped relatively recent because my kids were losing my puzzle pieces. But now that they're getting a little bit older, I might get back into doing puzzles. That is something that I would look for in a group, that if I found a group of puzzle doing people, those are my kind of people. Number two is you want to identify causes that matter to you. What are things that irk you about the world that you would love to help make it a better place? Now, you may not be able to change the whole world, but I remember watching the Spider-Verse movie, the first one, and Miles Morales was talking to Peter B. Parker from the other universe, and he ended up telling him that he was just worried about not being able to save everybody. And Peter B. Parker said, "You don't have to save everybody, you just have to save one person." And that really stuck with me because sometimes we make it a little more complicated than it has to be. We don't have to save everybody or the whole world, but we can save one person. And as long as we save one person, then we did all right. Number three on the list is you want to assess your skills and abilities. Is there anything that you do really well that you would like to help other people do really well? You'll find that if you have a particular skill set that you've been working for decades, people are very interested in learning the ins and outs of how you do what you do. You take it for granted because you've been doing it for so long, it's second nature to you. You have mastered the wisdom, but a lot of people are just at the knowledge level. They have no understanding or wisdom. They simply read the textbook and they don't understand why it is the way it is. If you can shed that understanding and that wisdom on them, people will be very grateful for that contribution. Number four on the list is you want to consider your availability and commitment level. Some groups are very intense where they're doing stuff all the time. Some groups are a little nonchalant, kind of relaxed. Some take attendance and will kick you out if you miss too many meetings. So you want to just take a look back. How much time do you want to devote to this cause? Obviously, take your time when you're first looking. Don't commit to anything right away. Go to a couple meetings, see how intense and serious they are, see how relaxed they are, how they feel overall about attendance, and then decide for yourself whether that's something that you can maintain, whether that makes sense for you in your retirement. Number five is you want to research volunteering opportunities. There are websites like Volunteer Match, Idealist, and All for Good. They can help you find volunteering opportunities in your local community that are aligned with your interests. Number six is you should reach out to organizations. Just have a conversation with them. There's only so much information we can get by Googling something. Again, we have all the knowledge, but we don't really have any of the understanding. Talk to the community, see what it is they're trying to accomplish, see what their goals are, and see if that makes sense for you. That leads you nicely into number seven, which is considering a trial period. If you ever had a leadership position and you were in charge of hiring someone, you know that people can make a resume look really good. You know that people can do a great job at interviewing. And that does not always mean that that person is going to do a good job when they come into the office. They may not be a team player. They may not actually know how to do any of the coding or any of the things that they promised. And sometimes you just got to get them in the office. That's why we have probationary periods. You should look at these organizations the same way. I'm going to try you out. I'm going to see if everything you said is true. And I'm going to see if it makes sense for me and my retirement desires. Can I commit to it? Do I like the people in the group? Do we get along? Can I see myself here long term? Go ahead and give yourself that freedom. You don't have to get it right away. You just want to get it right. That leads us nicely into number eight, where you can consider going to volunteer fairs or events. Just like when you go to a career fair and you talk to the HR people or the recruiter and you see if it makes sense for you. Just like when you went to career fairs, when you go to a volunteer fair, it gives you the ability to meet a whole bunch of different groups in one setting. It's almost like speed dating, so you get to maximize your time. How about you spend 5 minutes at each booth, see if you can knock a few things off your volunteer list, and then when you have your top two or three options, then you can go visit and actually see what the organization is like. Which leads us nicely into number nine, which is just listening to your gut. I'm someone who believes that every single creature on this earth has instincts. And just because humans also have a consciousness, it doesn't mean we don't have instincts. We often talk about them. If you ever walked into a room and you felt the tension, right? We say we can cut the tension with a knife. Well, what do we mean? We mean that we can feel that there are people who don't like each other in the room. We're not sure who it was that was arguing, but we know that people were arguing. Or when you feel that someone's looking at you, then you kind of look up and you look around and you make eye contact with the person, or you just feel like someone's following you. We have these instincts all the time, no different than a deer feeling like it's being watched by a lion and then it starts running. But I find our instincts or our subconscious mind, it's able to process information significantly quicker, where we're not necessarily sure what's wrong with someone, but we just don't feel right around the person. So we stop hanging out with the person. And then we find out 5 years later that that person killed someone or did something crazy. And you're like, yeah, I couldn't really put my finger on it, but I knew something was wrong with them. And when you think of it that way, you should trust your instincts. If you go into an organization and you don't really get a good vibe, it's okay. Go to the next one. You don't have to wait around to convince yourself that it's okay. Go ahead and trust your instincts. And last but not least, we want to start small and expand over time. I know you feel really good about being able to control all of your time, being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, and where you want. But go ahead and start small. Go ahead and join one group, then two group. See how you feel and see how your day looks. Then decide if you want to go to the third one or you want to get rid of one of them. And then you can keep on adding on until you have the right balance that you're looking for. Any group that you join, it's okay if you change your mind later. It's okay. Like I mentioned before, there's no reason for you to be anything but your most authentic self. It's going to attract you and put you in the right situations with the right people. Anyone else, you're going to attract the wrong people, which is going to ultimately be you creating your own prison. And that's not what we're looking for in retirement. We want to enrich our peace of mind. We want to enjoy our retirement. We want to create lasting and wonderful memories. And the studies show that building meaningful relationships is the first of many steps on the way to making sure that you have those memories and that joy in retirement. If you found value in this video, go ahead and like and subscribe so you can continue receiving valuable insights on how to create your own wealthy retirement system. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.